Welcome to the Rotary Club. I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you for bringing you guys some energy and some positive messaging. So I'm Kamal Ben Ali. My first name is Kamal, but my middle name is Ben. My dad's middle name is Ben. My brother's middle names are Ben. We're like the Foremans in that regard. But I chose Ben Ali for this book for a couple of reasons. One is because people remember Ben from Ben's Chili Bowl a whole lot easier than they remember Kamal. But number two is because this is actually a full circle journey from my dad's mentoring of me. And so my dad was a great guy. I got so much from both dad and mom. But, so about 3 years ago, as Kenny said, I was considering, kind of semi-retiring from Ben's. And I said to myself, turning that big 6-0 is a big milestone, right? When we hit these milestone birthdays, they're reflective. And I said, what is left on my plate? What does God have left for me to do and accomplish and to give? And I came up with, I could help kids. I'd much rather be an NBA player or do some other things. But I said, no, I think I need to help kids. And there's so many of our young people who are just hurting right now, who are acting out, who are not living their best lives. And I said, there's no real reason I can see for that. There's nothing wrong with these kids. They're perfectly capable. They're brilliant kids. I said, but the only thing that's going on with them is the program that's going on in their heads is off. They're misprogrammed, right? We are all a product of our thinking, of our thoughts. And I went back to my dad's. Let me go back to my dad's. What he taught us was he went in the 70s. My company is called Ben Ali Motivation for this project, and I have letterhead from the 70s with my dad's company, Ben Ali Motivation. When he went to Waco, Texas, and the program was called Success Motivation Institute, and he went and sat at the feet of those early motivational speakers like Napoleon Hill and Zig Ziglar and, Acres of Diamonds and these types of books. And he studied this and he came back, and I'm maybe 12, 13 years old. And he started to program us with spaced repetition. He had a little briefcase and a cassette recorder and 9 tapes on goal setting and personal motivation and values and how to use your time and all these types of things. And he would play them for us over and over and over and over as kids. We're like, it's driving us crazy, but we internalize them. How do you remember your times tables? How do you remember things? It's through repetition, right? And so it's how do you develop habits for success? And so I said, my dad poured so much into me, right? My other mentors poured so much into me. So we have Lisa McCurdy here, and we have David Krukoff, who all went to Georgetown Day School. So Georgetown Day School poured so much into me. It was a very, integral part of our education because it taught us, those things that May was reading up here from Eleanor Roosevelt. It taught us how to love people, taught us how to value people, taught us how to work together and to accept everybody, right? And so all these things that came out of this is why I love this organization, because of the Peace Committee, and because we love our country, and because of our shared values. And we believe that everybody in America should be living their best life. They should be sharing that American dream. And when I see the kids around me, for over 40 years, I've worked at Ben's Chili Bowl. So imagine, you guys who are from Washington know the transition this city has been through. So you know how bad it was back in the day down there on 13th and U Street. We had a wonderful opening, 1958, Black Broadway, wonderful time for African Americans in the city, in that area, in that corridor, over 250 Black businesses. But after the 68 riots, things took a nosedive, right? And people moved from the city, urban flight. They left the city, and it became a ghetto. It was an open-air drug market. And my friends, my Georgetown Day School friends, weren't allowed to come down to 13th and U Street in those 70s and 80s, right? I remember it was really rough down there. And I've seen so many kids from the neighborhood who dad and mom would, try to take in, try to feed. I learned all of my, my giving back from them, right? We always served on boards. We always volunteered, but it was the day-to-day interaction they had, not only our staff, but with our customers and those kids, give them $5 for every A they got on their report card, or feeding them when they were hungry, allowing them a safe place to do their homework. It was that small doses of love and kindness that I learned from my mom and dad early on, and that giving. And so, so what I saw, but I've seen 3 of my young team members killed from gun violence over the years. I had a cousin killed from gun violence. So when you live in Washington, D.C., and all of us are touched by this, whether you have a family member, a friend, a neighbor, and it's not until it really hits you in the face that you really, feel it. And so for me, I just couldn't stand back any longer and just continue. I said, what is left on my plate? I can give back to these kids. I can teach them the things that my dad taught me, right? And so the book, Ascend, it's a guidebook. It's a step-by-step guidebook for how to change your life through changing your thinking. We all have the ability to do it. I tell the kids, I say, listen, I can't help you make more money. I can't help you to have a better relationship with your family. I can't help you to improve your faith, but you can. And this is a empowering book to let everybody know their power to change themselves through their thinking. And so the book is a step-by-step guide, and it starts with chapter 1 is on healing. It's called Let Go, Let God. Because everybody's carrying some trauma, everybody's carrying some pain, right? All of us, right? What'd your mom do to you? What'd your dad do? What happened when you were in the 3rd grade and that kid hit you with the rock? We have these memories, right, from whatever happened to you. But some of these kids, unimaginable things have happened to them. Things, whether it's sexual abuse or seeing violence or seeing, being accessible to guns and drugs and all these types of terrible things in their neighborhoods, in their schools, in their homes. I can't imagine having somebody in my school killed from gun violence at a young age, like some of these kids have had. So, they've grown up in an environment, many of them, without fathers in the home. They've grown up around violence. They've grown up around these things, and we're all victims to some extent, or products to some extent of our surroundings, of our environment. Right now, I happen to have safe family, a safe home. These kids have not had that, but no matter what you've been through, I firmly believe no matter what you've been through, you can overcome that with the right programming, with the right thinking, right? And so this book is also a very spiritual book. And when I say spiritual, not from, whether you're Christian or Jewish or Muslim or whatever it is you are, it's an inside out recognition of yourself and the value that God placed in you. At the very root of this book, I start with saying, you were born perfect. Everybody in this room, all of your children and these children were born perfect. That God has given you everything you need to succeed at birth. Okay? So that's kind of the root of it, and saying, now, do you know your value? Do you recognize that? And so you put that in front of them and say, as human beings, we have tremendous bodies. We have tremendous spirits. We have tremendous brains, and everybody has the same model. Oprah's brain, Elon Musk's brain, nobody's brain is better than your brain. You have a perfect brain. It's a supercomputer that God gave you in your head. What's the program that's running? It's like having an iPhone, and you don't know how to use it. That's all. It has the ability. You just haven't figured out what God gave you, how valuable you are, and how to use it. And so the book teaches you how to use it, right? It starts with the healing, because you can't make the first step forward if you're holding on to the past. With that pain and trauma, it has people tied up like you're tied to a tree from a chain, and you can't break free from that. As long as you're talking about what happened to you yesterday, what your mom did, what your girlfriend broke up with you, what slavery did to your people, whatever it is, you got to turn around and cut that chain in order to move forward. Right? So there's healing techniques. How do you heal? I'm not a professional therapist, but some people, and it's going to be different for everybody, but recognizing that you're carrying the pain and taking active steps, right? The whole big word here is intentionality, awareness, right? So when you have intentionality and awareness, you say, here's the problem. Let me address the problem. Whether I need a therapist, whether I need to talk to a preacher, whether I need to join a church, whether I need to confront people in my past who have harmed me, whether I need to forgive. And forgiveness is a huge word here. Forgiveness and reconciliation. Not only do I need to forgive everybody who's ever harmed me, I need to forgive myself. Right? And so these are powers. And when you localize these through affirmations, when you put yourself in the right environment, perhaps a church environment, or and so this book teaches you this book is all about yourself, learning about yourself and the power that God has given you. You have the power to heal. This arm I broke riding my bike in front of a car. The doctor said he put a brace on it. And he said it will heal itself. No pin, no surgery. One bone hits the other bone, it will heal itself. Your body has a tremendous power of healing under the right conditions, with the right diet, with the right exercise, right? With the right conditions, it can heal. And you can heal your spirit, you can heal your brain, whatever's going on with you. So there's a lot going on with these kids, but it has the power, and you have the power individually to correct it. So how do we do that, right? So we start with the healing. We talk about your body. We talk about, we're all energetic beings, right? From the molecular level, everything is moving, everything is in energy. When you say, hey, that guy gives me a bad vibe, what does that mean? Right? We all carry energy with us. So how do you control your energy? Right? It teaches you deep breathing techniques, how to go outside and get a little sunshine and get some exercise, proper diet, proper rest. These are basic things. Nothing in this book is rocket science, but they're all universal principles that nobody's taught you about yourself. How you speak to yourself, so important, right? If you go out every day and say, hey, today sucks and I don't have any money and no food in the fridge and, I'm flunking out of this class, your words become a self-fulfilling prophecy. All of ours do. So when you speak highly, when you speak well, when you speak positively, it brings an energy. The people, how are you received? Why are you're not smiling? So it teaches communication. It teaches about your body. It teaches about your mind. It teaches you about healing. And it's a step-by-step guide of building better habits to heal and to learn, to grow yourself. I say, guys, you say, well, how's your memory? God gave you a fantastic memory, gave you a fantastic imagination. He gave you reason. He gave you all these tools. Intuition. What is intuition? We don't talk about these things and say, recognize that when you get that gut feeling not to go hang out with those guys, pay attention. There's an intuition telling you something's wrong there. Pay attention. Start paying attention to yourself. Start paying attention to your thoughts. Start paying attention to your words. I say, when I said I can't help you, I said, I know the person who can. I introduce them right in the mirror. So go look at yourself in the mirror every day. Go look at yourself eye to eye in the mirror. The eyes are the window to the soul. When you're having a conversation with somebody, why do you say look in their eyes? It tells you the truth about their spirit, about what they're thinking, right? So when you look yourself in the mirror and have that conversation with yourself, what are we doing today? What are we doing today? We're going to be great today. We're going to be happy today. We're going to go out and make this money today. We're going to help somebody today. What are we doing? This is the self-talk. And look in your eyes is another secret here. I talk about meditation. There's a principle of just going into the silence. Why? We have our conscious mind. We have our subconscious mind. The time you open your eyes in the morning, we're processing conscious mind, doing activities, talking to people, etc. When we go to sleep, my dad used to teach me, he said, son, when you go to sleep, does your heart stop? I said, no, Dad, heart's working. How about your lungs? Yeah, your lungs are working. How about your liver? How about your organs? So your brain is also running, son. It's running 24/7. It's working. You just don't know what it's doing. You're not paying attention to it. If you can learn to program your subconscious mind, that's called a meditation, basically, right? And so I say I have a higher level concept. They may not get it when they're young. I can't say that I practice it as a young person, but now as I've had the time to study these things, and this became a personal journey of self-discovery for myself to write this book and to be able to teach it. But I said, now I pop up every morning, and if you Google, what happens at 3 to 5 in the morning, all kind of videos will come up about this is a special time. Why do you wake up and you can't go back to sleep? So I pop up first thing in the morning, and I just sit there in complete silence and take some deep breaths, not trying to think. And I said, and so many wonderful thoughts will come to you. Whatever it is you're focused on, so many answers will come to your problems. I said, so it's a very spiritual time, because as we're born, again, the spirituality, we're all connected from birth to the universe, to all living things, to each other. So that's why I say it's a very spiritual book from my point, not a religious book, but a spiritual book of understanding ourselves, understanding that God has given us these tremendous gifts, and that we just have to pay attention and to develop them. People say, well, my memories. I said, how's your memory? Yeah, my memory's not too good. I can't remember stuff. Then the radio comes on and they go word for word, 20 songs deep. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with your memory. You may not be using it properly. Right? So you try to show them that. I say, well, well, having trouble making this money. I can't find a job. I can't do this. But they know every statistic from every game that played in the NFL or the NBA this week. Why? Because you watch 7 football games. Did you spend 1 hour working on your finances? Did you spend 1 hour working on your resume or looking for a job or networking? Whatever you focus on is the result you're going to get. I said, so when I asked the kids, I said, what'd you do this weekend? Just chilling. So guess what result you're going to get from that? Chilling. That's what the result is. That's not going to make you any money. It's not going to help anybody in the community. How do you spend your time? So you're just trying to say, hey, guys, you are capable. This is a self-empowerment book. You are capable. You are wonderful. Pat on the back, give me a hug. You are a loving, caring, wonderful individual who can live a fantastic life, who can have anything you want, who can build a beautiful family. But the negativity that's coming at you every day, all day, from the time you're a little kid, maybe from before you were born, they've been programmed with so much negativity. They're down on themselves. They're down on life. They're down on the world. Well, if you don't care about your life, that's when you're carjacking somebody. That's when you're carrying a gun around. If you don't value your own life, how can you value anybody else's? So this really teaches you. I say, well, let me ask you a question. How much are you worth? It's not all about money, but if I had to put a dollar figure on, how much are you worth? Are you worth 50,000, 100,000, $500,000, $1 million? I say, I look at everybody, all these kids. I said, you're worth at minimum $20 million. You're going to put in 40 years of work. The minimum amount you're worth is $20 million. I said, now, if you saw yourself as worth $20 million, how would you behave? You wouldn't be out there running around acting a fool. You'd be like getting ready to cash that check in, right? Because you see your value. So anyway, we're going to have time for questions, but I just want to give you guys a glimpse into the process that I went through, the book, the concern. And so I'm going to spend my next decade or 10, 12 years, whatever I have left, working on this. This is what I'm passionate about, helping the kids. And I say, and I wrote it, Ascend the Black Man's Guide to Elevation, Success, and Purpose with intention. The principles in the book are for everybody. These are universal principles that can apply to everybody at every level. But because they're so hurting across the country, not only in this community, but across the country, I thought that as a Black man, I have an opportunity to relate to them and to get the message to them specifically. But the principles are really for everybody. So they're universal principles. But I don't want to take up any more of your time. I know we have time limits here, but that's a glimpse of what it's doing. I'm hoping to speak to more groups. I'm hoping to sell the book, create a course out of it, because again, it takes repetition to build these habits.
This one's fine.
Thank you guys so much.
This one's Simon.
Anybody has any questions?
Yeah, and look, here come the questions. Get ready. Here comes the question. You give him the mic, he'll run it. There we go. Get that Texas man over there. He lit up when you said wake up.
Well, you left out one thing, having a mentor. And if everybody could have a mentor like you, we'd be a wonderful place. And I think that was an inspiring conversation. I never thought I'd come to Rotary and hear about Zig Ziglar. In DC, because I know Zig and I taught his son. So in any event, thank you for being here. It was a wonderful message.
Thank you.
Next one.
Slightly off topic, I wanted to ask, given your experience that you've made it on U Street, what can we be doing to help our businesses on U Street, Georgia Avenue, 14th Street, because of the youth issues there, and it's got to be such a struggle for the business to do. What can we be doing to really help get back to the 1950s, a successful, vibrant business community on U and 14th Street?
Yeah, it's a great question, and first of all, I'm going to comment on what your comment was on the membership. This is absolutely a mentorship-driven program, and it's not about me, and it's not about this book. It's going to take everybody to mentor a kid. Everybody who's willing, everybody who's got love in their heart, or is a little time, or donating, whatever. It's going to take all of us. And I started this. There was the Million Man March, which just had the 30th anniversary, and I said, what has done more for Black men? And I thought of the Million Man March was impactful on U Street. It was a big day. I'm not talking about the religion or the politics about it. It was bringing 1 million Black men together with the spirit of healing, with the spirit of reconciliation and forgiveness and doing better. And I said that, so that resonated with me. I said, it's really going to take that type of effort on a decade-long basis, on a 2-decade-long basis. It's not going to happen overnight. So Terry, I'll get back to you, but that's the type of mentorship it's going to take. And I love to start it. I love to turn it into a bit of a movement, right? When I say a movement, if you had on, anybody in this room had on a pink t-shirt or a pink hat, we'd say, hey, what'd you do for breast cancer awareness? Right? We'd instantly identify it, right? So perhaps if we have on the right logo or color or wristband or something, we'd say, hey, I see you're mentoring a young man or a young person. Fantastic. How's it going? I'm mentoring too, and blah, blah, blah. It has to be a caring mentorship program across this country. So it's going to take everybody. Terry, to your question, at the root of this, at the root of what has happened here to some of these kids, we say, well, what did I have that they didn't have? What happened in the 50s, which is you're speaking, that wasn't here today? And at the root of it all is family, right? The breakup of the family. And, we've got to get back to family values. But in this day and age and this time, so many single family homes, so many homes without a father figure, it's a very difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing to come back to the values. But and this is why what I said is, there's so many ills that our society has, but I said, what I can do is try to heal every individual young person. How do we make them, because they're going to come up with the larger scale answers in time. But it's really, how do we help this, the ills that all the great organizations around town are doing, because it's all interconnected. Kenny and I talk about it all being interconnected, whether it's homelessness, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's, education, the education system. It's all interconnected. There's no one answer, no one panacea for the issue. So I don't have an answer to it other than we all need to be more concerned. I mean, everyone has good heart, everyone is concerned, but a key question I have is, what are we willing to sacrifice? At the end of the day, what are we willing to sacrifice? We had a conversation earlier with someone who was saying, let's say for people in, my age group, right? I have a lot of good guys. They're very successful. They're doing great. They have great families. They've done their job. But I try to talk them out of that word retirement. I said, hey, are you smarter than you've ever been? I said, absolutely. I said, do you have more experience than you've ever had? Absolutely. I said, then don't put it in the closet, lock it away. How can you use that? How can you give back with that? How can you share that? And it's personal for everybody. So I would ask everybody in this room. I said, if God has woken you up this morning, there's still a purpose for you.
Amen.
And one thing that's in this book that I talk about that I didn't mention earlier was purpose. When you actually find your purpose, when you actually say, why am I alive? Not just to feed my family and make a lot of money and buy a nice car and a nice house and go to Italy. That's not why you're alive.
Yeah.
Everyone was given special gifts, and everyone that if you find how to use your gift, how to utilize what you're great at for the betterment of mankind, and you'll find that purpose. Once you find that purpose, every day is a joyous day. You never have a bad day when you're living your purpose. You can live a job and be successful, make a lot of money, and be miserable, right? So how do we find our purpose? And so that word to me is very important. But I say, as long as God woke you up today, there's still a purpose in your life. I don't care if you're my mom and this lovely lady are 92 years old, and they still have a purpose. It may be to share with their grandkids, maybe to write their memoir. Who knows? It's a personal thing for them to come to, but there's still work to be done. There's still purpose. And as long as you wake up every day, you got a purpose to find that. Any more questions?
Thank you very much for the work you do and the inspiration you bring to all of us and to everyone you meet in your life. It shows. One of the things that I'm grappling with in listening is with the children, like making that connection. So you've got a blueprint. One of the things with children today is learning to trust. And who do they trust? And how do they know whom they should trust? So when you talk about mentorship, I wonder what your thoughts are. If you were to call everyone in this room to mentorship, how would you walk through a door to reach the child that you're trying to reach to do that mentoring? Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I'm a part of a mentorship program at college bound. There are mentorship programs, but really it's a connection, right? Life is about connections. Life is about, the questions that you ask, the open-ended question of how, when you ask somebody, well, how you doing? They say, fine. No. How are you really doing? You're really taking the time to be a good listener, those communication skills where you really connect with somebody. And so there's somebody at the gas station. There's somebody down the street. There's somebody, who's serving you at the restaurant who you could, at some point, you connect with people. And when you connect with somebody, that's enough. It's enough to establish a relationship. Hey, could I treat you to coffee one day and, whatever, do you want to wash my car? What do you do? How can I help? It's really just the caring, the concern. When we walk down the street now, and I'm going to put all of us in the room with this. You walk down the street and you see 4 black teenagers walking down with the pants hanging off their tails and a hoodie on and a face mask and a skull cap. In the summer, it's 100 degrees outside, and you can say, let me cross the street on this side because they look a little scary. And they're just kids. They're just confused and they're just trying to fit in with their group. But if you reach out and say, hey, how you guys doing? Hey man, it catches them off guard, but it also they're actually looking for attention. No one is paying them attention. No one is pouring into them. They're raising themselves on the street without proper parenting, without proper supervision, without proper programs. And when you reach out and say, hey, I'd love for you to, wash my car every Saturday for $30. Maybe I bet they show up every Saturday. They need money.
Yeah.
Right. They're attacked with the message of consumerism every day and fitting in. They got to have those Nikes and they got to have that for them. And they don't have any money. The parents aren't giving them money. And so how are they going to solve that issue? So it's really, but if you're made aware, hey guys, you're being marketed to intentionally, all of us, right? We're all being marketed to in this very capitalistic society. You must have the Mercedes and you must take this trip and your neighbor did it. You must do it. We all must fit in. And when I get back to that question, what sacrifice are you willing to make? If I went out and tell my wife today, hey honey, met this really great homeless guy and he just lost his job and his wife and got a couple of kids. Maybe we just move him in with us for a couple of years. Get them back on their feet. But my wife looked at me like, maybe not, she's not quite ready to make that sacrifice yet. But what are we, greed and comfort is the enemy for all of us. Greed and comfort for our society. Some few people hoarding all the wealth and the comfort of, I got the game on, I got a cold beer in my hands, I can hit this golf ball, I could do that, or I can go help the kid.
That's Stanford.
It's Stanford. And we choose comfort. So it's really, and it's not until things get really, really bad that now we're willing to sacrifice. Civil rights movement, dogs and fire hoses and, whatever. Back in the day, lynchings, when it gets really bad, everybody's ready to fight. Everybody's ready to stand up and do something now. Black Lives Matter movement, you had white policemen actually killing black people on camera. Now we're mad. Now we're ready to do something. We're killing each other all over town by the hundreds. Nobody's mad. We're used to that. That's just.
I got to get a mic on that one.
So what are we willing to sacrifice as a society, as an individual? It's an individual first question. What do we like to sacrifice to help somebody else? We'll leave you with that. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Good job, Kamal. Don't go nowhere. We're going to honor you with a tree. We're going to plant a tree in your name. Yes. You're going to provide shade for others. It's your kind of visionary thing when you do things for others. And it'll be down near the
Beautiful tree.
tidal basin.